The grand foyer of the Barrington estate gleamed under the chandelier's soft glow, its marble floors reflecting wealth and order. But the air was electric with tension when Evelyn Barrington's voice cut through like a whip. "Get your hands off my baby." Her words ricocheted off the high ceilings, sharp as a gunshot. At the top of the sweeping marble staircase, Evelyn stood trembling, her silk robe slipping off one shoulder, revealing a glimpse of her pale collarbone. Her manicured hand still burned from the slap she'd just delivered, her perfectly polished nails catching the light. Yanel Porter stood frozen at the base of the stairs, her cheeks stinging red, her arms instinctively cradling 6-month-old Olivia against her chest. The baby's soft weight anchored her, though her heart raced. She hadn't meant to hold Olivia for long, only to steady her in the bassinet when the infant stirred during her nap, the delicate cashmere blanket tangling around her tiny legs. "She was rolling, ma'am," Yanel said, her voice low and measured, honed by years of being unseen, unheard. "I didn't want her to fall." Evelyn's eyes blazed, her platinum blonde hair falling loose from its chignon. "You don't speak unless spoken to," she snapped, descending a step, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. "You are not family. You are the help. You do not touch my child." At that moment, the heavy oak front door swung open, and Daniel Barrington stepped into the foyer, still in his black gym clothes, sweat beading on his forehead, wireless earbuds dangling from one ear. His sharp blue eyes took in the scene, Yanel clutching Olivia, the red mark blooming on her cheek, Evelyn's flushed face radiating accusation. His jaw tightened, not at Yanel, but at his wife. "Start talking," he said, his voice low and edged with steel. "Because from where I'm standing, this doesn't look right." Yanel gently lowered Olivia back into the bassinet, her hands trembling but deliberate, tucking the blanket with care. The baby cooed, oblivious to the live wire tension crackling through the room. Yanel's dark eyes flickered briefly to the floor, her composure unshaken despite the bruise forming on her cheek. She never cried, not in houses like this, not after the life she'd lived. Evelyn crossed her arms, her posture rigid, masking guilt with indignant poise. "She was holding her like she gave birth to her," she said, her voice trembling with conviction. "I walked in and saw it." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "Did you see her do anything wrong?" "I saw enough," Evelyn hissed, her emerald earrings glinting as she turned her head. Daniel shifted his attention to Yanel, his tone softer but firm. "Were you alone?" Yanel hesitated, her hands clasped tightly at her sides. "Yes, sir. Mrs. Barrington was upstairs. Olivia stirred, and I just adjusted her blanket." He nodded once, then turned back to Evelyn. "You hit her. In front of our daughter." "She had no right," Evelyn said, but her voice wavered, the edge dulling. Yanel took a step back, her cheek now a deepening violet. "If you'd like me to pack, I understand." "No," Daniel said, his voice resolute, stopping everyone cold. "You're not going anywhere." He paused, his eyes locking on Evelyn's. "But we need to talk. Now." The door to Daniel's home office clicked shut with a heavy finality. Inside, the room was a fortress of dark wood and leather, the fireplace casting flickering shadows across the walls. Evelyn paced in front of it, her arms folded tightly, her silk robe trailing like a ghost. "You're seriously taking her side over mine?" she asked, her voice brittle. Daniel sat at his mahogany desk, elbows resting on its edge, his face unreadable. "I'm not choosing sides. I'm looking at what just happened. You slapped a woman who's worked for us for 2 years without even asking what was going on." "She overstepped," Evelyn insisted, stopping to face him, her hands gripping her elbows. "You didn't see her cradling Olivia like she was her own. It was unnatural." Daniel leaned forward, his voice slow and deliberate. "Maybe what's unnatural is your obsession with control." Evelyn froze, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. "I've reviewed every nanny cam clip since we hired her," Daniel continued, his tone steady but cutting. "Not once has Yanel done anything but protect that baby like she's gold. She sings to her when you're gone. She rubs her back when she cries. Did you know Olivia sleeps better after Yanel holds her?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Daniel said, his words measured, that your hatred of Yanel has nothing to do with her job and everything to do with her presence. Her calm. Her color. Evelyn's face flushed. You think I'm racist? I think, Daniel replied, his gaze unflinching, you saw a black woman holding your baby and made her an enemy. Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no retort. That evening, the Barrington estate was suffocatingly quiet. The dining room table, set with untouched plates of seared salmon and roasted asparagus, sat abandoned. In the laundry room, Yanel folded towels with mechanical precision, each crease flawless, her wrists aching from the earlier sting. Upstairs, Olivia whimpered through the baby monitor, needing her bottle. Yanel didn't move. Not this time. Daniel appeared in the doorway, holding the monitor, its green light blinking. She's fussing, he said. Yanel glanced up, her eyes guarded. I'm not allowed to touch her. He shook his head. That's not coming from me, I know, she whispered, folding another towel, her movement slower now. A pause hung between them. Do you want to go home for the weekend? Daniel asked. I'll pay for a driver. Yanel's hand stilled. I don't want time off, she said, her voice steady but soft. I want to be treated like I'm human. Daniel nodded, his expression softening. You will be. Upstairs, Evelyn stood behind the nursery door, eavesdropping, a half-filled glass of Pinot Grigio trembling in her hand. When Daniel joined her in their bedroom later, she didn't speak at first, her face pale in the dim light of their crystal bedside lamp. Then, quietly, I'm not going to apologize. Daniel sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, his shoulders tense. Then you don't understand what just happened. I was protecting my child. No, he said, his voice cutting through her defense. You were protecting your image of what a mother should look like. And it didn't include her. The silence that followed stretched through the night, heavy and unyielding. The next morning, Daniel slipped into the estate's security room, a sterile space Evelyn rarely visited. Wall-to-wall screens displayed live and archived footage from every corner of the house, cameras installed after a scare with a previous nanny who'd left Olivia unattended for hours. Daniel queued up the nursery feed from the previous day, time-stamped 10:42 a.m. On the screen, Yanel entered, her movements quiet and deliberate. Olivia stirred, her tiny arms flailing, the blanket slipping. Yanel gently lifted one corner of the fabric, tucking it under the baby's chin, then instinctively cradled her for a brief moment, her touch soothing, not possessive. That was when Evelyn's shadow appeared in the doorway. Daniel watched the clip 3 times, his jaw tight. No malice, no overreach, just a caretaker doing her job with quiet grace. He burned the clip onto a flash drive and carried it upstairs to the master suite, where Evelyn sat at her vanity, brushing her hair with mechanical strokes. Watch it, he said, handing her the drive. She rolled her eyes, setting the brush down. I don't need to. Yes, he said, his voice cold. You do. Reluctantly, she inserted the drive into her laptop and clicked play. The footage unfolded, Yanel's gentle hands, Olivia's calm response, the absence of anything threatening. Evelyn sat in stunned silence, her fingers gripping the edge of the vanity. Daniel didn't gloat. He simply said, what would have happened if you'd slapped a white woman for this? Would you have even questioned her? Evelyn closed the laptop slowly, her voice barely audible. She still shouldn't have. Daniel's gaze hardened. She still shouldn't have been slapped. For the first time, Evelyn's silence carried the weight of shame. 2 days passed in a strained haze. Yanel moved through her duties with precision, never meeting Evelyn's eyes, her presence a quiet shadow in the house. Evelyn barely left her bedroom, her coffee growing cold on the nightstand. Daniel worked from home, the air in the estate thick with unspoken truths, like a storm had passed but left cracks in the foundation. It was his private investigator, hired months ago to vet the household staff after the previous nanny incident. About Yanel Porter, the man said, his voice low. She's not who you think she is. Daniel stiffened, his grip tightening on the phone. What about her? She graduated from Howard University, top of her class. Majored in early childhood psychology. Worked for the Henderson Foundation, designing trauma-sensitive childcare programs. Left it all 2 years ago. Why? Daniel asked, his voice tight. The PI hesitated. There was a case. A foster child she bonded with. The system pulled the kid. She had a breakdown, resigned. Dropped off the grid after that. Daniel hung up slowly, his mind racing. He sat in the dark of his office, staring at the framed photo of Olivia on his desk. This woman, this maid, was more qualified than any therapist they'd ever consulted. And Evelyn had struck her for caring too deeply. That evening, Daniel found Yanel in the nursery, adjusting the pastel mobile above Olivia's crib, her movements careful, almost ghostly. She didn't hold the baby, just tidied the room, as if she no longer felt welcome. Yanel, he said softly. She turned, cautious, her dark eyes searching his. Yes, sir. I know about your past, he said. Howard. The foundation. The boy. Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't look away. I didn't lie on my application. I just left it blank. I know, he said, stepping closer. And I'm not angry. Yanel exhaled, a breath she'd been holding for years. Daniel walked to the crib, where Olivia babbled in her sleep, her tiny fists curled. She sleeps best when you're around, he said. I've watched you. You don't just care for her. You connect, like someone who knows what it's like to lose what they love. Yanel's eyes shimmered, her voice barely above a whisper. I lost him, Mr. Barrington. He called me Mama for 6 months. Then one day, they just took him. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. You never got to say goodbye. No, maybe, he said gently, this is your second chance. For the first time in days, Yanel smiled, a small, fragile thing, but real. I would never hurt her, she whispered. I know, Daniel replied. But now Evelyn needs to know that, too. The next morning, Evelyn stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee into a porcelain mug, her hands unsteady. Yanel entered quietly, keeping her distance, the bruise on her cheek now a faint shadow. I'll be out of your way, Yanel said, her voice soft but firm. I've started looking for another placement. Evelyn didn't respond at first, her fingers tightening around the mug. Then, slowly, you don't get to walk away before I say what I need to say. Yanel froze, waiting. Evelyn turned, her eyes red-rimmed, not from anger but from sleepless nights. When I saw you holding Olivia, I saw someone doing what I should have been doing. Someone more maternal than me. And that terrified me. Yanel's expression softened, but she stayed silent. Being a mother doesn't come with a rulebook, Evelyn continued, her voice breaking. But slapping the person who's loving your child like their own, that's not in any book either. A long silence stretched between them. I was wrong, Evelyn whispered. It wasn't about you. It was about me. Yanel blinked, her voice gentle. Are you apologizing? Evelyn nodded, barely perceptible. Yes. And I know it's not enough. No, Yanel said, her tone kind but firm. But it's a start. Just then, Olivia's cry crackled through the baby monitor. Evelyn hesitated, then said, would you mind checking on her? Yanel's smile returned, warm and steady. Of course. Daniel watched from the hallway as Yanel entered the nursery, her touch instinctive, her voice a soothing lullaby to Olivia's soft whimpers. It wasn't just professionalism, it was something deeper, parental, protective, honest. He stepped into the room, Evelyn trailing behind him, her face still raw with the weight of her admission. There's something you both deserve to know, Daniel said quietly. Yanel turned, Olivia nestled in her arms. Evelyn stepped closer, her hands clasped tightly. When Olivia was born, it wasn't easy, Daniel began, his voice steady but heavy. We tried for years. Failed IVF. Miscarriages. We finally found a donor who matched everything we wanted. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. We never told anyone, not our friends, not family. Daniel continued, the donor was a black woman. Her name was Imani Fields. A literature major from Atlanta. Brilliant, beautiful. She passed away during childbirth complications. Yanel's breath hitched, her arms tightening slightly around Olivia. You didn't just see yourself in Olivia, Evelyn said, her voice trembling. Olivia sees herself in you. That's why she calms when you're near. That's why she trusts you. Yanel's eyes glistened, tears threatening to spill. You're not just the help, Daniel said. You're part of her story. Of ours. Spring arrived quietly at the Barrington estate, morning light streaming through the nursery's bay windows, filling the room with warmth. Olivia's laughter echoed through the halls, a sound that had replaced the suffocating silence of suspicion. Yanel now wore a new role, not as a maid or nanny, but as Olivia's full-time developmental care specialist, a title Daniel had insisted on, recognizing her expertise and heart. She'd accepted the offer with quiet pride, her Howard University degree no longer a secret buried in shame. Evelyn had changed too, slowly but earnestly. She enrolled in parenting therapy, read the books Yanel recommended on child development, and began joining Yanel and Olivia on afternoon walks through the estate's sprawling gardens. She still struggled with vulnerability, her polished exterior cracking at the edges, but she showed up every day. Trying point one afternoon, Yanel opened the front door to find a package on the steps. Inside was a framed photo of Olivia reaching for her, arms wide, her face alight with joy. A note in Daniel's precise handwriting read, "Family isn't just who shares your blood. It's who shows up when it matters most." Yanel placed the frame on the nursery mantel, beside a small candle she lit each night for the boy she'd lost. Now, she had someone to love again, and this time, she would never be asked to let go.